Any questions so far? Any questions about the process? Yeah.
You said you're not going to take a vote, but at some point in time,
We might have to.
there's going to have to be a consensus.
Right.
So the question is, what happens? Sorry. What happens? Does 1513 move it forward? I mean, does it have to be, 20 to 8? I mean, who's going to make that call at the end?
Mm-hmm.
I hope it's 28 to 0, by the way.
Thoughts about that?
If we're going to have a vote on something like that, I think then that decision will have to be this group's, whether it wants a super majority, whether it wants a majority, whether it wants unanimous. I mean, that's something to talk about.
The final recommendation that we come up with is not binding on the Board of Education. Is that correct?
My understanding is that is correct. George?
Well, the question on the table, and put in another way, what is the word defining terms? If we know what terms mean, it's easier to wrap our heads around. So Joe's question is, what's consensus mean?
Mm-hmm. What's it mean to you?
Consensus means that probably the vast majority of people around this room agree.
Mm-hmm. Meaning what?
3/4.
3/4? Pat?
Well, that's a question I've been struggling with ever since we described this process. And when I was first asked about whether or not a vote would ultimately determine the outcome, Paul, you're right here. I was asked that in one of the first community conversations, and I said, well, my dream or my vision, my hope is that the choices, once we examine all the options, that the way forward would not be conflicted, that the best option of those options would present itself in a way that most people either would say, that is my choice, or I can accept that choice. It might not be my first, it might be my second choice, but I can accept it. So I don't know if that's possible. I mean, what I've said to people is, let's see where the process takes us and trust the process. I don't want us to decide the end result in terms of our action before we engage the process. So I'm saying to people, I'm trusting it, and I'm one of 28, and I'm hoping that my 27 colleagues can trust the process also.
Keith?
Consensus could mean even people who are not agreeing with the consensus can agree with the consensus. In other words, I can look at a group of 28 people and see that I'm in a sufficient minority that I think most of you agree with something that I don't necessarily agree with. I think we can sort of, at the same time, not necessarily define a number, but be able to look at it and say, you all seem pretty sure of your opinion. It's not mine, but it looks like most of you, and I think that's a way to look at consensus as well.
Bob, did you want to?
I'm not sure we should talk now about the vote, whether it's 15,
Bob, can you just speak up?
Oh, yes, okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
I'm not sure that we should talk about a vote, 15, 13, 21, whatever. I think we should get into the process, let it play out for a while, and when it comes time to make a decision, or close to making some decisions, see how it goes. If it turns out that we have to have a vote, then I guess we can decide at that point. But I think if we start to set a number now, then it doesn't feel right to me. It's not open enough.
Yeah, I agree with Pat and Bob. I think we should move forward, see where we go, and I think we can remember that, if it ever does come down to a vote, the fact that there's agreement, there's a difference between I agree or I don't disagree, or there's a difference between that, and hopefully if there's not unanimous agreement, there's unanimous I don't disagree.
Right.
I would also say that if we find ourselves in that circumstance, if we have to vote, and again, I'm hoping we don't, but if we do, that the choices would be between two very good options. So it is not that we would have 17 options that we'd be voting on. We probably would have refined our discussion to the point where we've said, okay, percolating to the top here are those 2 or 3 options that represent the best of what we can do for our community. So the choices hopefully will all be good choices at the end.
Mary Ann?
Actually, I was going to ask if it's possible, because I'm respectful of the fact that people are going to be watching this afterwards, to put those microphones on the end 2 tables so the folks at the end, or either that or spread out a little bit, because no one is going to be able to hear them, right? Can they?
I don't know if these will, my sense is these will.
No, one of them. One will.
Can you share that? Let me
So
try
why don't we
this one.
pass
Can you move this one down?
that one down? And
Great, thanks, Mary Ann.
it's not going to move down.
Yeah. Okay, let's do the best we can for tonight, and this is our first time out, and I didn't say this, but I'll say this now. As we go through this, there are going to be points at which this process does not work, may not work. I just want to say that. I mean, our technology is not perfect tonight, right? And there are going to be points at which this process may not work. And I'm just a big believer in, we will fix it. We'll figure out how to sort of create a new path forward. And so the first thing of order will be for us on the technology side, which we'll make sure we've got in order for the next meeting. But these processes, particularly with 28 folks, there are going to be some peaks and valleys in how we go through this. And I'm just a big believer in, there may be times I turn to you and say, look, this isn't working for us. Let's figure out a different way to do it. And so we'll just make it work. Okay, so this is one of those examples. All right. My sense is, and let me see if this works. My sense is that we want to start moving through the process. We want to work toward seeing if we can reach a point, large groups. My sense is that we want to start moving through the process. We want to work toward seeing if we can reach a point as we get closer to the decision making, that what I'll say is we will revisit as we move towards viable options. We will revisit how we're going to make the decision. My sense is, my experience is, in working with large groups and working with groups of 200, 300, 500 in doing this kind of thing, that by the time we get there, it will become more evident about where we are and whether or not there's a real tension here. Okay? So for those folks who are concerned about this, if you can just bear with us for a little while, let's move through the process. And as we get closer, I'll just make sure we revisit this issue. Okay? Does that work? Does that work for everyone?